Dachau concentration camp is located in southern Germany. It's about a 30-minute drive from Munich, which is right next door, and about a 1.5-hour drive from Nuremberg. You may hear the name of the camp pronounced a couple of different ways. Both are correct. The English pronunciation is Dachau. The German pronunciation is Dachau. In this present-day aerial map, you can see how large the camp is in comparison to nearby houses. The prisoners' camp is seen to the right, and this is the portion that is open to visitors today. The large area to the left is where the SS camp once was, which included SS headquarters and training facilities. You can see the remains of a road right here leading from the SS camp to the prisoners' camp. Some Dachau SS members lived in houses just south of the prisoners' camp, which you can see here with the red roofs. Here's a close-up of the prisoners' camp. You can better see the road that went from the SS camp over to the prisoners' camp. The visitor center is down here where the pink star is. From here, there's a path that leads visitors to the main gate that I've represented by this yellow star, and then into the concentration camp. Once we pass through the gate, we will look to the right at this long building, which houses the museum, exhibitions, and we'll also look at the prison cell block, which runs behind it. And then we'll cross this large roll call square, and we'll make our way down the middle of the camp, eventually making our way down here to the crematorium. To the left is a picture of the outside of the visitor center. And Dachau opened in March 1933, 2 months after Hitler became chancellor, and was the first of the Nazi concentration camps. Initially, political prisoners, homosexual men, Jehovah's Witnesses, Roma, also called gypsies, clergymen, and criminals were sent to Dachau. As the years went on, increasingly more and more Jews were sent to Dachau. This is the path leading from the visitor center to the site of the prisoners' camp. Dachau was liberated by American troops on April 29, 1945. As mentioned on the prior slide, Dachau opened in 1933. In the 12 years of its operation, over 200,000 prisoners passed through its gates, a majority of whom were men. This is a model in the Dachau Museum. You can see how similar it is to the aerial maps we looked at earlier. You can see the SS camp here, and the prisoners' camp here, and the main gate is right here. From this view, we are standing on that segment of road connecting the SS camp to the main gate of the prisoners' camp. On the billboard, you can see the SS camp in the distance and the train track along the left side of the road. In this photo on the right, you can see the remains of the train track and also the remains of this platform, which is also seen right here. Here's a view from the same area, but now looking towards the main gate to the prisoners' camp. You can still see the train track and the platform up here. The photo on the right is what it now looks like when you look back to where the SS camp was. This building is known in German as the Jorhaus and is where the Camp SS had offices. Through the gate, you enter the camp. To the right is a close up of the main gate with the famous phrase Arbeit macht frei, which means work sets you free. Oftentimes we associate that phrase with the gate at Auschwitz, but it actually appeared on gates at several camps. So, just to orient ourselves, we have gone from the visitor center here through the main gate, and next we'll make our way to where this yellow star is. In this picture, we've just come through the gate and entered this large open area. To our left are some barracks, and these barracks would have stretched all the way to the other side of the camp. Ahead and to our right are the roll call areas, which we'll visit in a minute. First, let's move up a little past that lady straight ahead. This long building was once known as the camp warehouse, but now houses the museum and exhibitions. It was in this building that new prisoners were processed. Their clothes and personal items were taken, their heads were shaved, they were made to shower, and they received their striped uniform. This area is known as the International Monument and consists of different parts, including this bronze sculpture representing figures intertwined in barbed wire. And here's a close up of that powerful sculpture. Another section of the International Monument reads, "Made the example of those who were exterminated here between 1933 and 1945 because they resisted Nazism, help to unite the living for the defense of peace and freedom and in respect for their fellow men." In the foreground is a tomb containing ashes of an unknown prisoner. The wall behind it reads, "Never again." Another component of the International Monument is a chain connecting the various classifications of prisoners at Dachau. The monument was dedicated in 1968. Interestingly, at that time, criminals whose triangular patch would have been represented by the color green, asocials by the color black, and homosexuals by the color pink, in 1968 were not considered groups prosecuted by the Nazis. So their colored triangles are not represented on this. Although it does look like there are some areas of black triangles, they're actually not. They are hollowed, and what you're seeing is the dark background behind them. This is part of an exhibit in the museum. The Dachau Camp Memorial Site opened in 1965 for the 20-year anniversary of its liberation. Initially, it was primarily school groups that visited Dachau. However, after the site underwent redevelopment in 1997, visitors steadily increased. Now, Dachau has close to 1 million visitors a year. The first time I visited Dachau was in 1991, before the redevelopment, and we were practically the only ones there. Later, when I went back in 2019 and 2024, there were hundreds of visitors. When Schindler's List came out in 1994, I feel it helped renew worldwide awareness of the Holocaust, and as a result, shed light on the importance of memorializing and preserving the thousands of sites where atrocities took place. The camp gate that we walked through to enter the camp was actually a replica of this. This is the original camp gate. This card here is what's on the wall over here. If we just look at the second paragraph here, it says, on the night of November 1st through the 2nd, 2014, unknown persons forcibly entered the grounds of the memorial site and stole the historical gate of the former concentration camp. A replica has replaced the historical camp gate at the Jour House since April 2015. In early December 2016, an anonymous tip-off to the police in the Norwegian city of Bergen led to the recovery of the stolen gate. In February 2017, the camp gate was returned to the memorial site. The thieves have yet to be identified. This display shows a cup, bowl, and spoon that were once issued to a prisoner. You can see the word Dachau etched into the handle of the spoon. These chess pieces are part of an interesting display. The information card reads, chess was a popular pastime played in the limited spare time given to prisoners. It not only entertained but also helped to keep their minds active. Even chess tournaments were held from time to time. This chess set was carved by a prisoner using an eating knife in the spring of 1933. Chess figures out of wood could only be made by prisoners who had access to tools and materials. Some prisoners formed playing pieces out of bread. This is called a whipping trestle. During the Dachau trials, a former prisoner is seen here demonstrating how it was used. Prisoners were made to remove their shirts, and they would lean over the top and stretch their arms out. SS guards would then whip the prisoners over their back. This display shows some of the surgical instruments that were used at Dachau. The information card reads, disregarding every principle of medical ethics, inexperienced SS doctors practiced their operating techniques not only on ill but also on healthy prisoners. Many died as a result of these medical procedures. Only from the summer of 1942 were doctors from the ranks of the prisoners permitted to perform operations. Despite the most adverse conditions, they strove to restore the health of their ill fellow prisoners. This sculpture is a depiction of one of the death marches. David Ludwig Blaka was a deaf artist and Dachau survivor who created this powerful sculpture of two skeletal bodies forming the shape of a swastika. So on this map, the red stars indicate where we've been, and the yellow stars are where we're going. The first two times I went to Dachau, I totally missed the camp prison, also sometimes called the bunker, because it was located behind the main building that we were just in. On this map, you can see the long building we were in, and then behind it is another long building, and this is the camp prison. So if we follow the yellow stars, we'll look at the camp prison, and then we'll move over here to one of the reconstructed barracks, and then we'll make our way down the middle of the camp to this far end where some of the religious markers are located. On the photo to the left, you can see the building that we were just in that housed the museum and the exhibitions. And you can see over here the camp prison to the right. At the far end of the path between the two buildings is this, which is an execution wall where prisoners were shot. On this billboard in front of the prison, you can see a diagram of the prison layout, including two long corridors containing prison cells. Inside the main entrance is where prisoners would be interrogated, registered, and have medical exams. On the left is a cell door which has a flap that can be lowered and food passed through. On the right, these two photographs are just two of the many prison cells. This is a cell that's actually consists of three adjoining cells that a prisoner by the name of Johann George Elser was imprisoned in. His last name is spelled Elser. And I don't have time on this presentation to go into the complete history, but I do encourage you to look up his name. His story is pretty amazing. In 1939, he made a homemade bomb that went off and was, if the circumstances all worked out how they should have, would have killed Hitler and many of Hitler's high-ranking SS members. After this failed assassination attempt, he was captured and sent to Sachsenhausen concentration camp, kept in isolation, and then was later transferred to Dachau and stayed in this cell. He was later executed, and his remains scattered somewhere on the grounds. It is unknown exactly where. In this view, we have exited the museum. We can see part of the roll call area and also one of the barracks, which is where we'll head next. Now we're in one of the barracks. There were originally 34 barracks in Dachau. They were designed to hold 200 prisoners each, but towards the end of the war, this number surged up to 2,000 prisoners per barrack. All of the barracks were demolished in the 1960s, and two new barracks were reconstructed, which stand today. Here you can see a picture of the three-tiered bunks. In this area of the reconstructed barrack, you can see a washroom on the left and the latrines on the right. Next, we'll move to where the blue star is and take a 360-degree view of the camp.
Certainly not a majority of issues. No way. Right? That wasn't like for mainstream.
Now we'll head down the main path that runs along the middle of the camp. On either side of this path are outlines where the 34 barracks once stood. In the distance are the religious memorials that were built after the war. Here you can better see the outlines of where the barracks once stood. Now we've arrived at the other end of the camp from down this middle section. In the distance is the museum and the roll call area. To our backs are the religious memorials we'll look at next. From this view, hopefully you can get a sense of how large Dachau is. This memorial is called the Mortal Agony of Christ Chapel and was constructed in the early 1960s. Two former Dachau survivors, who later became leaders in the Catholic Church, were involved in its design. In the first photo, you can see a crown of thorns at the top of the memorial. The middle photo shows a close-up of the crucifixion of Christ, which is located above the altar in the third picture. This is also part of the memorial, and it reads, "Here in Dachau, every third victim was a Pole. One of every two Polish priests was martyred. Their holy memory is venerated by their fellow prisoners of the Polish clergy." Next is the Jewish memorial, which was built in the late 1960s. It's kind of hard to see from this view, but there is a menorah on top of the structure. As you walk down this ramp, you pass through a gate and come to a beam of light shining through the hole above. Here's a view from the base of the beam of light looking up. At the top, you can see the menorah. The third religious memorial is called the Protestant Church of Reconciliation, which was built in the late 1960s. Inside the structure is an altar and pews. The fourth religious monument is a Russian Orthodox chapel, which is located near the crematorium, and we'll see shortly. As we leave the Protestant Church of Reconciliation, we'll follow this path across a bridge. And continue down this path leading to the crematorium. And once again, to orient you where you are, we have just left this area where the religious memorials are. We've crossed this bridge and are making our way to the Yellow Star where the crematorium is. As we enter the crematorium area, the sign reads, "The SS had a crematorium built in the summer of 1940 because the number of dead had risen dramatically. It lay outside the prisoners' camp and could only be reached by passing through the SS camp. In 1942-43, a second building with a larger crematorium and a gas chamber was built. The gas chamber was, however, never used for mass killings. Executions and murder operations were carried out in the crematorium area, though. Already immediately after liberation, the crematorium grounds served as a site of remembrance. Several graves of ashes were laid out on the grounds. Numerous memorials and a garden layout similar to that of a cemetery still shape the former crematorium area." This is a picture inside Dachau's first crematorium. The sign reads, "This crematorium was built in the summer of 1940 after the foreign prisoners arrived and the mortality rate greatly increased. A year later, it was already working beyond capacity. The crematorium was in operation until about April 1943. During this period, approximately 11,000 prisoners were cremated here." Across from the old crematorium, we find the larger second crematorium that began operating in 1943. The building was also known as Barrack X and has a gas chamber, morgue, and disinfection chamber. Behind the building and to the right is an open area that served as an execution site where prisoners were taken and shot. The next set of pictures will correspond to the areas circled. From left to right, we'll visit the gas chamber, the incinerator room and execution site, and lastly, Death Chamber 2. This is inside the gas chamber, designed to look like showers. According to current literature from the Dachau Memorial Site, mass-scale killings using gas never occurred at Dachau. The new crematorium has 4 ovens compared to the 2 ovens in the original crematorium. So you have 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th one is down here. Also in the crematorium is a plaque which reads, "Here in Dachau on the 12th of September 1944, 4 young woman officers of the British forces attached to the Special Operations Executive were brutally murdered and their bodies cremated. They died as gallantly as they had served the resistance in France during the common struggle for freedom from tyranny." On the other side of the crematorium is Death Chamber 2. The room was used to store the corpses that were brought from the prisoner camp to be cremated. As we leave the crematorium area and head back towards the bridge into the main camp, the 4th religious monument will be to our right. And here we find the 4th religious monument, the Russian Orthodox Chapel. The sign reads in part, "In the summer of 1994, members of the Russian armed forces built the chapel to commemorate the Soviet prisoners of war who lost their lives in the Dachau concentration camp. The inauguration was on April 29th, 1995. Dachau was surrounded by guard towers and an electrified fence. The photo to the right is taken from inside the prisoners' camp, and I'm standing in the grassy area, which was once known as the prohibited zone. In front of me is a ditch and then a fence, which would have been electrified and lined with barbed wire. On the other side of the fence was the SS camp. An outdoor billboard describes these zones. So this is the grassy area that I'm standing in, the prohibited zone. Anytime a prisoner got into this zone, they could be instantly fired upon. Here's the ditch, and then the electrified fence with barbed wire. During the 12 years Dachau was in operation, it is estimated that around 42,000 perished as a result of disease, starvation, torture, or execution. Now a peaceful stillness blankets the grounds of Dachau. And in that peaceful stillness, we can become a voice for those no longer here.